Now, back in 1991, Capcom had already racked up its share of hits. Games like Ghouls and Ghosts, Final Fight, and Mega Man had propelled Capsule Computer into the minds and homes of many gamers' chubby cathode ray boxes and dank, stanky arcades. Now, for as maligned as the original Street Fighter is today, with its near impossible special moves, awkward movement options, and goof troop cast of characters, Street Fighter II was the exact opposite of that, ushering in the ultimate level up for the company, making them not only a household name, but exploding one of the most important genres of the arcade boom of the 90s. But much like the music industry and gaming, you're really only as good as your last hit.
What have you done for me lately?
And by the mid-90s, it was time for something new, something fresh, something
Flesh.
In March of 1996, Capcom released another monster hit, pun absolutely intended, titled Resident Evil, one of the most essential, most genre-defining games of all time. The virus that launched 1,000 nemesis, Resident Evil would spawn many copycats, imitators, and straight jack moves for years to come. Resident Evil 2 was truly massive, but by Resident Evil 3 and Code Veronica, it felt like even Capcom was running out of new ideas to keep the survival horror genre from feeling like the decaying corpses they built their mansion upon. And much like William Birkin under the white-hot lights of a test lab, it was time to experiment with some weird, freaky-ass mashups. On January 25th, 2001, we would get to see the results of Capcom playing God yet again, becoming the first game to sell over 1 million copies for the highest selling console of all time. Onimusha would eventually top over 3 million units sold and receive nearly universal praise, with outlets such as IGN, Game Informer, and others coming in with an average right around 8.5 overall. It would also be a prototype of sorts for another seminal series under the Capcom belt, Devil May Cry. But what is it like to play this game now in the modern day? Well over 2 decades later? Well, let's go ahead and find out. Onimusha, or Demon Warrior, translated from Japanese, was the dark spawn of said Birkin experiments. And to tell you that 15-year-old me loved it would be a bit of an understatement. Onimusha Warlords was one of the first games that my brother and I owned, right after Tekken Tag, Dead or Alive 2, and SSX. It holds a special place in my heart for that reason, as the PS2 stands as my favorite console of all time to this day. I remember playing this game religiously, y'all. It just seems so cool to swap zombies for Demon Ninja, knives and guns for katana and magic, water puzzles for, well, more water puzzles. Survival warrior, indeed. I should coin that. Now, the origins of the Onimusha series date all the way back to 1997, where it's Resident Evil but ninjas spirit was born on the original PlayStation. Now, despite a couple years of development, this version of the game was scrapped, with a brand new core being developed for Sony's shiny new console, starting in the late 90s. Keiji Inafune of Mega Man fame was given Resident Evil 1.5 as a starting point to create the quote, Sengoku Biohazard. Do with that info what you will. I played the 2019 remaster for this video, which includes some nice quality of life updates, as well as a few unfortunate yet necessary changes that we'll get into shortly. In Onimusha, you play the samurai warrior Samanosuke Akechi, traipsing about in the Sengoku period circa the late 1500s. The game opens with a dated but dope introduction, showcasing a large-scale battle where historical figure and consummate tea connoisseur Oda Nobunaga is taking in his eventual victory. But just as the end seems near for his flailing foes, a wayward arrow strikes our future unifier directly in his thorax, creating a trait hole that Tammy Slayton would appreciate. RIP to my homie Caleb. As the Demon King makes a demon pact, Princess Yuki is kidnapped. Samanosuke gets fucked up proper by this big bastard, meets up with the female ninja Cade, and eventually makes a bit but pact of his own. Onimusha's story is basic. Okay, at best. I can't say I remember much about it then. All these years later, it impresses even less. But it provides enough framework to get shit popping and a vehicle for some absolutely hilarious dialogue. Yo, Tenchu Shinobi walked so Onimusha could hang glide like a flying squirrel across feudal Japan.
So, the mice come out to play. That means
This dialogue had me in tears, for real.
So Princess Yuki is underground. Oh.
It's hard to appreciate just how good we have it these days if you weren't around to have your auditory senses assaulted by late 90s and early 2000s voice acting in gaming. There are so many absurd moments where you just won't believe how wooden and stilted conversations become. When Cade rescues Samanosuke from nearly drowning, you would think she had just pulled him from the shallow end of a wading pool, unimpressed, undisturbed, unbothered. Samanosuke had his vocals redubbed for this remaster, but I cannot for the life of me find a reason. Everyone else is left untouched, but critical aspect of the sound has been changed entirely for reasons. We'll get to that later though. For now, let's talk about the gameplay. Now, if you squint hard enough, you could honestly mistake this for a fan hack of a late 90s Resident Evil game. Samanosuke is Leon, Cade is Claire. There are pre-rendered backgrounds, tank controls, at least the remaster fixed this, clashes you mash out of to avoid extra damage, herbs, typewriters are replaced with magic mirrors, magic is Claire's grenade rounds, keys are still keys, but of course there are significant differences too. Starting out the game as Big Sam, you come to grips pretty quickly with combat. Square is your standard slash, you can block with L1, have a pseudo lock-on slash strafe with R1, triangle for your magic blast, and circle to absorb orbs. There are 3 primary weapons, an all-arounder lightning blade, a heavy fire blade, and a wind-type glaive. You can also find ranged weapons, which take the form of a bow and a matchlock gun. The remaster adds the ability to change weapons with a single button, but Devil May Cry, this is not. You will not be changing blades mid-combo, and you basically have to be standing entirely still to swap them out at all. The flow of the game will be familiar to anyone who has played a Resident Evil game. Run around and either fight or avoid enemies, collect resources like herbs and arrows, find keys, figure out puzzles, watch a cutscene, rinse, repeat. The aforementioned orbs are left behind by enemies and bosses as you kill them and are utilized to upgrade your weapons and your magic. These are essentially damage buffs, as I didn't really notice my attacks getting faster or the weapons changing shape or length. One beef I did have with the orbs is just how damn fast they disappear off screen. Like, you kill an enemy, run away to have a second to try to gather orbs, and they're already blinking. Starting the absorption process doesn't stop them from blinking either, so if you're far away from them, it's not a huge deal because you'll probably upgrade everything pretty quickly if you do any amount of squabbling. Still, it was a minor annoyance, especially considering you need to upgrade your magic to get through specific doors throughout the game. Another beef I had with this game, as I replayed it, was how little it explains its combat or gameplay systems, like, at all. It never really gives you any guidance in-game on advanced or even basic concepts. The combat system isn't, overly complex or anything near what you'd see in a DMC or Monster Hunter, but explaining its encounters combo flow and dodging would have been, nice. I was only mildly impressed by the puzzles, which offer a pleasant diversion, but aren't exactly the head scratchers that its zombie cousin offers. And as water continues to be the absolute bane of my existence on this channel, it needs to be said, fuck that water puzzle. Like, fuck it furiously, okay? Go ahead and grab your phone now, because you'll want to watch someone else do this to avoid having to see the same damn cutscenes 8 times before you save our buddy Sam. No modern game should force you to sit through cutscenes these days. Why didn't the remaster add a skip button? It It would have been so simple. There are also segments where you play as the Lady Ninja Arcade, and these sections may have been some of my least favorite. From a mechanical standpoint, she's fun to play as she's much faster than her samurai friend, but because she has no magic, you basically get no benefit from doing anything with her. Yet they share the same item pool, so you're only losing items in these sections. While there aren't many extras, generally speaking, with Onimusha, even back in 2001, outside of a couple costumes for finishing the game with a high enough rank, this remaster does the absolute least. Beyond the option to swap between tank and 3D controls, none of the Xbox exclusive Genma updates are here. There's nothing cool like concept art, a history viewer, or really anything. But if you played this game back in 2001, you probably remember the one main extra, the Dark Realm. A 20-floor gauntlet, the Dark Realm tests your abilities like no other combat trial in the entire game. I didn't complete it this time around, but I remember always enjoying it as a kid, and it leads to, by far, the dopest weapon in the game, with one-touch lethality, the Bishamon sword. Bosses are pretty meh in this game, and a lot of them are hella spongy, seemingly taking everything, including the kitchen sink, to fail. I'm looking at you, giant fly bitch. There's no real change in tactics at any point throughout either, so they tend to turn into pretty dull affairs of attrition. The rooftop dude was a fun fight, but the constant camera angle change that comes with the pre-rendered backgrounds made it a chore despite being enjoyable otherwise. Which is actually a great segue to talk about the controls. They do feel responsive, and the updates for the remaster are significant, adding 3D movement versus the original D-pad based tank controls. But you still have to constantly adjust your movement trajectory as screens change, and it never feels better than just okay. Overall, I enjoyed revisiting Onimusha's gameplay, but this romp is definitely getting long in the tooth here. Combos are basic, counter timing felt weird in this new 60 frames per second environment, and it generally felt like a proof of concept in its execution. It's easy to be reminded, nearly 25 years later, that this was an early PS2 era game with roots all the way back to the PS1. It's good, not great, but considering you can finish this game in 3.5 to 4 hours, I think it does what it needs to do in the time that you'll have with it. What I did appreciate, however, was the update to the graphics. While this is clearly a game released in 2001, having widescreen support, higher res models, and touched up backgrounds was a sight for sore eyes. However, these are still upscaled like 480i pre-rendered backdrops, and they are a blurry mess at times on modern screens. But man, I gotta say, I do miss some of that old school charm in modern games. Pre-rendered backgrounds were such a vibe. Models are low poly but have a lot of character to them with some really cool enemy designs. Many of the animations were motion captured, and many of Sam's combat movements hold up well, even if the cutscenes are a largely early 3D affair with lots of standing still and mouth holes just flapping. Lip syncing really doesn't exist in this realm, and let's talk about the audio. There's actually a lot to say. The remaster defaults to English voice acting, and let me tell you, just fucking leave it, please. I changed it to Japanese with subtitles for a little bit, and while it's clearly better, we aren't looking for better here, man. We're looking for entertainment, and again, Echigoya would shed a tear hearing some of these campy ass lines.
Sweet, beautiful, lovely, the dripping blood, and what's this? Oh, liver.
But trust me, for the S's and G's, leave the English dialogue on. It will provide much laughter. The music in this game, however, not funny. Not funny at all. Plagiarism is not a joke, y'all. I think H Bomber Guy taught us that pretty damn well. And this remaster features entirely new music from the original because of one fake deaf man's folly. Initially credited for work on the Resident Evil and Onimusha series, Mamoru Samaroguchi. Bro, this man not only claimed to be deaf and wasn't, but was also a complete phony of an artist. A big, fat The bullshit started to come to light when a 2013 interviewer noticed that he was answering questions before the interpreter could pass them along to him, and he reacted to a doorbell. Imagine seeing Stevie Wonder make eye contact with his handler. We'd all lose our shit. Then later that year, after his first ever written symphony was performed, the proverbial Oni broke free from the shackles in hell. It was revealed that for all these years, he had a ghostwriter. Now, I've heard of that shit in rap circles, but can you imagine like Beethoven having a ghostwriter? This damn near some Milli Vanilli shit. I mean, that could explain the DualShock Resident Evil classic track though. I bet he wrote that one too. Yeah, you know the one. Maybe he really is deaf. Anyway, this led to a whole heap of legal and moral troubles with this soundtrack, and Capcom made the decision to go ahead and replace everything, with Takashi Nagaki finally receiving credit for what he did for the original. The new soundtrack is actually solid. I can't say I remember being gobsmacked by the original Onimusha OST. This is not Onikage's theme, it would seem, so I wasn't
Too mad about it?
What is on offer is a bit generic at times, but I don't know. I was largely satisfied with it. Could I pick this soundtrack apart the way I could, say, the Ender Lilies OST or Katamari? I mean, not at all. It has a feudal Japanese feel with big orchestral swells, lots of string sections, and sort of just blends together with the background. But like, you know, in a pleasant way. Sound effects are also solid with nothing to really write home about. Overall, the sound package on offer is pretty great, but I wouldn't spend the kind of time I usually do breaking it down because it's just solid. That dialogue though. Whew. You know, with this review, it's been fascinating. I enjoyed revisiting Sengoku Japan and enjoyed my 3 hours and 40 some odd minutes with this PS2 classic. But I have to say, I don't know if I can recommend this game to new players or really even to those looking to relive the era. You really see all the seams as you play this game. It's very rudimentary in almost all areas. The story, the overall gameplay loop, and the sound. It all works, but it's not nearly memorable or formative enough to make it essential playing. I always look forward to seeing how I feel about these games after I play them, either again or for the first time. And this one left me feeling sorta meh. Now, 15-year-old me adored Onimusha. I played it and beat it a half dozen or more times, as well as the sequels to come. But you forget just how much those sequels expanded on the combat, the story, and how much more they differentiated themselves from the Resident Evil formula. Onimusha Warlords Remastered could stand to absorb a few more souls. It feels underpowered in the modern era and seems like it has limited merit today. If you see the price is low or you have an afternoon to kill, you could do much, much worse in this game, but you could also probably do better. Now, thank God this sold decently well and resurrected fan interest enough that a new Onimusha is coming to us soon, as we learned via the Video Game Awards in 2024. Slated for a 2026 release, I could not be more excited for this next Onimusha. I swear, my boy Pat and I called it before it even happened. That reminds me, I'll actually be sitting down with Pat over at the Retro Blast podcast right after I film this to discuss Onimusha even more. So stay on the lookout for the episode soon. And in the meantime, check out the two of us having a fun chat about Tenchu down in the description below. But yeah, if you want to see where the series roots all started, give Warlords a go. It is undoubtedly a relic of its time, but an interesting one nonetheless. You won't be disappointed, I think. Yeah, we'll go with that. Now, if you dug this video, watch this one, all about another early PlayStation classic that I did love returning to, and that needs a sequel desperately. Come on, Namco. Follow me on IG and Blue Sky at TheGamersician, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more great content. Peace.